So right off the bat, I'm gonna say I was not really excited about this movie. Like the trailers weren't really doing anything for me. I was already a bit disheartened about kind of the state of DC at this time, with
Yes,
Zaz laugh and all his weird
that's
kind
not
of
his name.
comments.
We know full well the man's name is Mr. Zorboff.
Zorbath. Okay, okay.
We have to refer to him as that. Evil Emperor Zurg. That's his name
Yes,
as well.
yes. So yeah, all
And
his weird commentary he was making about his plans for DC, canceling things. I don't know. Like I was looking at this trailer and I'm like, it looks fine, but for whatever reason, I'm just not excited.
and
So
this is within reason though. This is entirely
yes, so it wasn't like
within
anything
reason.
against the movie. It was just literally yes. It just wasn't doing anything for me, these trailers, and I wasn't as excited as I had hoped to be or was expecting to be. But it wasn't, of course, until The Rock kind of spilled a little bit of tea, which I think he was just kind of
Yes.
saying a lot because he was really proud of this get that he was able to get. In kind of seeing Koi's interview with him and seeing Koi talk about his interview with him, Koi Jandreau, he talks a lot about how The Rock kind of maybe was spilling a little more than he should have because he was just really excited that he was able to do this for the fans.
I
That he
do
was
think a lot more than he should have, to be perfectly honest with you.
yes, which
Because
we
really, it would have been so really, really celebratory if I mean, of course, we are going to get into
spoilers,
spoilers about
yes.
Black Adam and these type of situations in this particular review right now. I think that goes without saying, but we
Yes.
do have to say it, of course, because the particular get that Dwayne Johnson was able to get for the mid credits of this movie was, in fact, a not weirdly cut in from another year's
Not a
filming. It was an
headless
actual,
yeah,
not a
not a
headless
headless
version
yeah.
of, was actual present today Henry Cavill as Superman in
Yes.
this movie directly, which is enormous when you look at the
Y
problems that has surrounded
DC.
the well DC and DC's attitude towards
Towards
Henry
Henry
Cavill.
Cavill and Superman, like, he was a great casting, if they didn't like what Snyder was doing with the character, it's not the character's fault, it's not the
No.
actor's fault. He's going with this dark, brooding thing that Snyder was kind of putting him in. So just get another director that has a more kind of light, nature that fits that character that also kind of can get those darker aspects, but the kind of lighter, wholesome side of Superman as well. But I think that because of those movies, particularly his first film, Man of Steel, was very kind of self-serious. They put that on
Yeah.
Cavill and this I
Look,
think it was mostly
possibly.
Walter Hamada and his choices he was very much against. He wanted to keep it very vague in terms of Henry Cavill as Superman, and he was kind of the one behind wanting to recast with the black Superman and all of these kinds of things. So, yeah, I just don't know why they kind of just, pushed him off to the side like that, not giving him his own standalone sequel to kind of grow the character and grow his world a little bit more. They just jumped straight into, BVS, which was just ridiculous and felt very rushed. So,
Well, look, it appears that even as we're talking about this right now, um, that a further Superman movie with Henry Cavill is on the cards again,
yes,
which
yes.
is exciting, to be honest with you, because it is a casting I like a lot. I really do, and admittedly, they are movies that I tend to like, and I'm not getting into arguments with people, and thankfully, you don't want to get into arguments of this kind of nature either.
No.
But they are admittedly movies I kind of really do quite enjoy. Um, Ultimately, while I wish that this little very impressive get in the mid credits, this showing this in the mid credits of this movie had have been kept completely secret, when it was painfully obvious about 10 days ago, unfortunate or 10
Which
days
they
before the
actually
movie's
I
released.
heard they filmed it, like, as late as Labor Day weekend, like, in September.
I see, I don't know when Labor Day is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
in September, this is when they filmed
really?
this. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
That is
mhm.
impressive then. I
Yeah,
mean,
like September
you can
1st,
see
beginning of September.
you can really see why the excitement was there from Dwayne Johnson then. I
Yeah,
understand it. I understand it. I understand if he couldn't have helped himself because admittedly, look, there's a lot there's a lot riding on Black Adam, and I don't think we should be saying things like, "Oh, this changes DC movies forever." I don't think we should be
no.
over exaggerating things like that. Ultimately, what are my feelings towards the movie? I had quite a pleasantly enjoyable time watching this movie. I do not think this movie is anything particularly overly special. I do not think this movie is any sort of
Changes the
game
face of
changer.
yeah, comic book
No,
movies, anything
I
like
do
that.
not think this movie is the next big thing for DC or any of these overly hyped up titles that you may be seeing certain news outlets give. I think it is a really quite enjoyable movie that is exactly the kind of attitude that Warner Brothers and DC should be having towards their franchise, quote unquote, movies. Because I'm sure I've said this before on this show, not can't have been that long ago. What I think DC should be doing with their movies is exactly what this movie did, is have certain actors who play certain characters show up in various movies, not really focus on any sort of big overarching story continuity from movie to movie.
Yeah.
Use the characters that are available to them in in the movies where they can. I mean, look at what this movie did. You
Yes,
got
you
this
get the subtle
Justice Society,
interconnectivity. Mhm.
but you get the Justice Society, who we've never met in any sort of
No,
movie before. Nobody has any clue who they are unless you really know your DC comics.
but you're not
But
even asking about
but
where
you're
they
not
came from, where
bothered.
were they, what were they doing?
No,
Like,
and
you
you're
don't
not.
really care because
You
the
don't
story they set
care,
up around it leads you to just not need to know that. You just kind of
and
can
that
just go off assumption of,
yes, and that is what it is. It is not caring in a negative sense of, "Oh, who are these people? I don't care. I'm not interested." It is not caring because the movie just presents them as new things. It is just
Yes,
or the movie, in fact, doesn't even present them as new things. The movie presents them as things that are in this kind of world, but
that
you're
have
just
been
being introduced to
established
them now.
yes, they've always been there. We just
They've
doing things.
always been there.
We've just never, been privy to
Exactly.
their doings, their
And
happenings.
this is, I think, just such a really good way of going about it. And having Viola Davis as Amanda Waller show up in there as well, just for
Yes,
that little tiny bit of,
of
yes, we're using some of the
interconnectivity.
same
Yeah,
yes, we're using some of the same actors in some of the same roles, and this is great. This is what should be happening.
and I'm
And
looking up
because
her name, I don't remember,
we're so
yes.
used to seeing the way Marvel do things with hyper focused interconnectivity and story continuity
Yeah,
that just makes that is so precise
yes.
that we're too used to that. We're too used to that, so we think it's the only way of going about things. It's
And
not the only way
DC
of going
felt
about
like yeah, and DC felt like that was the only way they could keep up with Marvel was to do this deep interconnectivity. But if you just pepper in these characters, it feels very much like reading a comic book. Comic books sometimes have
absolutely.
very connective stories, some and continuity. Sometimes they don't and they veer off, but you're gonna see the same characters popping
Yeah,
in and out of
sometimes
other
someone
people's
just randomly shows up in a comic
exactly.
book or
So
or
even down
because they're
to
there.
that blonde woman, Harcourt, who when they first kind of capture, Black Adam and they, take him to, the headquarters or whatever, and
Or
then,
yes, the Task Force X space.
yes. Yes, so her and she has plays a lot of a bigger part in Peacemaker, which you haven't watched yet, I
Ah,
believe. Yes. So, like, even just seeing her pop in, it's like, okay, this is very much connected in a connective world, but I don't need any kind of bigger picture situation.
yeah.
Also by the like, it was very much by the numbers. I
Oh,
believe The Rock the
much,
Rock
very,
was
very much
cast,
so.
yes, The Rock was cast in this role, like, 16 years ago, and this movie very much felt like a movie that would have come out 16 years ago, and I'm perfectly okay with that as somebody who really had a love and appreciation for the good, the bad, the ugly of that early era of comic book movies.
Yes, early
Like,
to mid
I
2000s
Yes, I
comic
mean,
book
they were
movies.
ridiculous, they had some really dumb choices, but it was the effort in kind of trying to bring something as complex as comic book stories to life, and I really had such a huge appreciation for that.
But do you know what
So,
it also
your
was? It was not
your
just the effort.
Fantastic Four and your Daredevils and all the
Yeah.
iterations of Batman and Superman and I appreciated that because it was these cool characters and that effort to try to make them real to you. So,
Yes, and it's not just that that's the positive on those movies though. Another positive on those kind of movies, the that era of superhero movies, is the fact that you watched them and you took them at face value as just, oh, what they were.
yes.
If something was a bad movie, okay, it's an objectively kind of naff movie, kind of poorly done movie, but you still just take it like, "Oh my
And you
god,
have
look at
fun with
these."
it.
You just have fun with
Yes.
it, don't you?
Yes, you're getting your cheesy
Affleck's
winks.
Daredevil.
Yes, you're getting your catchphrases and your corny winks to the camera and your incessant needle drops and your cheesy jokes and, your bombastic action and your slightly gummy CGI, but you're yeah, it's definitely doing those things that early superhero movies were doing with, your catchphrases and your winks to the camera. And, I still had fun with those things. I'm not stressing about why is he speaking perfect English? Like, I just gotta go with it,
No,
you know?
no. Why is it in, like, random I mean, you don't even know where is Kandak? I don't know where it's
Yeah,
supposed to be.
no.
Do you know where it's supposed to be? Does it
No,
matter?
no.
No! This is the good thing about it, because and again, I'm kind of I'm not ragging on Marvel, that's the wrong term, but
I mean, you can rag on Marvel a
I'm
little
not
bit,
doing
it's
I'm not doing
fine.
that, but as wonderful and obviously as wonderful as the MCU is, has been, and continues to be, it has made the population be way too serious about this kind of movie,
Yeah.
and has moved away from what these kind of movies were in the even in the even with the really good ones, the Spider-Man trilogy, the X-Men movies, you know, you had stuff like Ang Lee's Hulk and the Daredevil and Elektra and the
Yes.
Fantastic Four things,
Yes. Mhm.
and,
Your
you know
several iterations of the Batman and
oh, yeah, it just
your
bizarre
2006
things,
Superman. Yeah, mhm.
Punisher movies and things like this.
Yeah.
Yes, Superman Returns and things like this, where you just took them as individuals, and I think that's just should be what they're taken as, or certainly what DC should now be taking theirs as. Not strict individuals, but
No,
this really kind of smartly small way of
interconnectivity.
mixing
Yes, because yeah,
should
like
be
we
exactly what they're
mentioned,
doing.
great seeing Amanda Waller pop in, seeing Harcourt pop in, characters that have been established in other films in this greater universe. Um, and they're just there because they were in other films, but they're not completely tied to any kind of bigger story with those films.
Yeah.
So it works. I mean, I think if you watch Peacemaker, they actually had a scene where the Justice League shows up. Obviously, again, it was another in shadow Superman, but
Okay.
but they were there
Yeah.
because, and to kind of be like, okay, they are part of this universe.
This is what
Just
you don't need to know when in
just like
time everything
Shazam.
happened.
Yeah, like in Shazam, you have characters who are fans of this Justice League and these versions of these characters that have had their own films. They're established in this world
Yeah,
enough that people are fans of them and have posters and have memorabilia and things like that,
exactly. People
but
talk about them.
yes,
The kid in this movie's constantly talking about how much he
yes.
loves superheroes.
But we're not inherently connecting it to those stories in any kind of way. Those things happened in that thing, but it's all in loosely in this universe, and I think that really worked for it, and really kind of playing with this, very much decades past kind of mentality,
Yeah.
in terms of telling the story, uh, really, I think, worked in its benefit. I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. I wasn't thinking too hard about anything. They were kind of throwing a lot of action at you, which just made it feel like very much like that era and very fun. So it was just an easy watch, an easy superhero watch to where I wasn't having to do homework or think back on other things or feel too serious about things. And yeah, there were some interesting themes in there about anti-heroes
Yeah.
and what makes you a good guy and what makes you a bad guy and that kind of thing. So they did have a really interesting kind of deeper through line surrounded by all of the fun that you would get from an early era superhero movie, and it wasn't taking itself too self-seriously, and you
No.
could tell that the people doing it really were having fun and really cared about what they were doing, and the moments that were supposed to hit, and, you know yeah, I think they just did a good job really kind of playing, in this kind of new vibe of not being super serious and, not tying themselves or anchoring themselves to other aspects of this universe.
I would say in an odd way, it feels unusually fresh for being such a
Kind of old feeling.
typical movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's
It's
ridiculously
fresh
easy
for
to plot
DC
out
because
the structure.
yes.
It's ridiculously easy to understand what's going to probably happen in this movie. It's
Yes.
it's painted in front of you 20 minutes before it happens. It's so obvious, but in that way, doesn't it just feel like something that you kind of want? I understand superhero fatigue is a massive thing, and this might not help that because it is very typically structured,
Yeah.
but it is doing what the more enjoyable DC things in more recent years have
Yes.
done, what the Suicide Squad did, what Birds of Prey did,
Pray.
was
Yeah.
use characters that are established DC characters that may or may not have shown up in previous movies that this particular production team have made,
But I will say,
but without any story requirements from other
yes.
things, and you're just focusing on the story in that particular movie. The next time Black Adam shows up in a DC movie, it might not matter where he's been since the end of this movie. It probably won't matter. You might just have them no, you might just have him kind of knowing of other things, and this is fine. But you don't need to you don't need to be so precisely story focused. That is what the MCU does brilliantly well.
Yeah.
What you should do brilliantly well, DC, is what you admittedly have been more doing in more recent times. Just focusing on individual movies and making those, yes, using some of the same people because we like some of the casting choices. We
Yeah.
really, really like some of the casting choices. So use them, milk them for all they're
Yes.
worth. Milk Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn for all
Oh,
she's
yes,
worth. We
as
love
long as
her.
you can, yeah. And Amanda
John
Waller,
Cena as
Viola Davis.
Peacemaker, even.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. I'm really excited for you to watch that show because it has its own thing while, very loosely connecting to this universe as well. So it's definitely doing that kind of similar thing. But I feel like DC has taken 3 avenues and this is a new avenue this movie, and kind of
yeah,
very dark and brooding camp with, the
this is the path they should be taking.
Yeah.
This is 100% the path they should be taking. And I mean, to speak about the movie itself, I mean, do we kind of like what happens in the movie itself? I mean, the Justice Society themselves. Do we enjoy those? I happen to really quite like Pierce Brosnan as Doctor Fate. I know absolutely nothing about Doctor Fate, but I
Yeah.
really quite enjoyed him in
Yes,
this
a lot of
movie.
people in my screening really enjoyed him as well. But yeah, like you have your kind of dark and brooding side of things. You have your very dark and twisted side of things with like the Batman and the Joker. And then you have, your very kind of light, bubbly, self-aware, twisted kind of things with the Birds of Prey and your Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
And this is very much kind of in the middle of all of that. It's taking
Well, it's
kind
in
of
the
your
Shazam vein, isn't it?
Yes, it's taking your kind of, serious through line theme, but putting kind of the fun of what a comic book movie should feel like, and
Yeah.
hearkening back to that early era, of fun and kind of shutting your brain off to a certain degree, uh, of film. So yeah, it's kind of creating this definite new avenue, that's very much not too dark, not too kind of crazy, and not too twisted, it's very much very watchable, kind of for everybody, kind of makes you feel good, very much nostalgic, and just a lot of fun.
I mean, is it interesting? Is it strange for me to say that this is doing it in the Shazam vein, given the fact that it's basically just a dark Shazam
Yes,
movie? Because
which
that's what Black Adam is.
and I'm really gonna be annoyed if they just skip over Shazam and go straight to a Superman Black Adam fight. Like, let him let him show up in
Yeah.
Shazam 3, let him be the villain in Shazam 3, and then we can kinda build up to the Superman.
Do it sounds like you're being a bit too presumptive, preemptive with your whole DC story situations. We've not even had Shazam 2 yet, and you're already thinking about a Shazam 3. Take the individual movies for what they are. Stop getting ahead of yourself. Stop getting ahead of yourself. Stop planning ahead. This is the problem that they've been having. They're trying to plan too far ahead. Stop it.
I I
Stop it.
I'm just excited. He needs to show up in something else. He needs to have a thing with Shazam. I mean, Shazam was the magic word here. We need
I
to
mean, he
have him
does need to have a
he
thing with Shazam. He is
Zach
Shazam.
Levi Zach Levi wants to get up in the mix. Come on, like, do that first, and then we can build up to Superman.
They are literally
Mhm.
they are literally two sides of the same
Yes, we
character.
had Jaimin Hansu in
He
this
he
movie
was
popping up.
playing
Yeah.
the same character, the same
Yes.
wizard who gave Billy Batson his powers. It is literally
Yes.
it's the same word, it's the same magic, it's the same symbol on his chest, it's
Yes.
virtually the same super suit. It's one's black and one's red. If one of Shazam's if one of Billy Batson's superhero family wore black, they would just look like Black Adam. It,
Yes.
it
And
it is he is a Shazam character first and foremost. I'm led to believe from what I understand
yes.
of
Mhm.
Black Adam. So of course I think we need those two to do something together
Y We gotta build up to the
before
big
he does
Superman
anything
thing.
with Cavill.
Yes. But yeah,
If that ever does happen,
yes, yes. But
for God's sake, give me one more Cavill movie. He can be
on his
doing
own.
anything
Yes,
on his
please.
own, fighting an actual Superman villain.
Not
This is
being
what
mopey and depressed,
this is
please.
what we want.
I don't want any more sad Superman, please, please.
Even
Slightly
though the
tor
sad Superman was done really well, and
slightly
I like that as
slightly emotionally tortured, okay, but, like, you know, mostly mostly kind of has the determination to push forward because of, his love of people and the world and
well. He's got this. Well, if you go in story focus, he does have this technically now from Snyder's Justice League. He was far more up for kind of hope and humanity in that movie, even if he was wearing a suit that looked eerily similar to Black Adam's suit, but just with a hope symbol on rather than a
Yeah,
lightning bolt.
this means hope.
No, I'm not talking about the other Justice League. I'm talking about the actual one that made sense. You know,
Yes, yes.
the one that was actually released later and was really long
Yes,
and
yes.
had the whole kind of half violent fan backing behind it.
Yeah,
Um,
those people are crazy,
but
but,
I actually really quite liked
I
Snyder's
did.
Justice League. I thought it was great.
I did as well. I really did. It gave us more Superman and worked well with him, and yeah, Henry Cavill definitely deserves this redemption. He's been treated, I think, really shoddily by DC, and
Yeah,
he definitely deserved his standalone sequel. And then we could have gotten into like building this world, but they wanted to jump the gun. They kind of totally neutered him and just in BVS and and then kind of cut him off after that because of their kind of sloppy story decisions.
yeah.
uh so I'm glad he's getting this chance. I'm really excited that The Rock fought for him and really wanted to give the fans this, wanted to do this for Cavill, because I remember seeing pictures and like conversations between the two of them. They're, drinking their booze and having these nice conversations about Black Adam and Superman and that whole kind of vibe. And so I'm really happy that The Rock like really heard the fans out and wanted to do that for us, wanted to do that for DC, and really kind of went over some heads to make this happen. Because I mean, seeing him, I knew it was coming, and I saw him and I still kind of teared up a little bit because I was just excited for Henry
I mean,
Cavill
right?
to have
Yeah.
this redemptive moment, and made me very happy for him, for us as fans, because I think the majority is very positive towards his Superman, for him to get this chance. So, overall, I mean, just to kind of close out this review, I really had a lot of fun with this movie. I liked it way more than I had planned to. Like
So
I
did
said,
I.
it definitely goes back to that early era of comic book movies where you kind of don't question too much. You just are excited to see these characters come to life and have fun with it. Really great action. The new characters they introduced were really well done. I love Aldous Hodge. Like, people don't talk enough about how fine that man is, and he was
I mean, yeah,
great.
we
Uh,
were talking about Jonathan Majors before as
yes, but
far as
Aldous Hodge, I
large,
mean,
muscly black men go. Aldous
yes,
Hodge is
I
also
mean,
pretty good looking.
yes, I mean, I think it came up a little bit in Invisible Man because he was like, he was very
Yeah,
like, people were like, he's big.
he is
um,
big.
Yes, but
He
seeing him
is
with his,
big.
cool haircut and his, little,
His
African
Hawk
print
suit.
and his African print, I'm like, he's got like he's a little
He
fashionable,
did, yeah,
like
he
kind of
did.
leading this whole crew, like the
You know
new
what I really
characters,
did like actually about Hawkman, and I am semi familiar with Hawkman from some comic books I have actually read. So he was the one that I actually knew
Yeah, me
better
too.
than the others of
The
the
other
Justice
two. Mhm.
Society. Hawkman's also in it. Is he not in the Justice League TV show, the animated show? Is that Hawk Girl? Is Hawk Girl in that?
I don't remember, but I know, and his doesn't he pop up in one of the CW shows as well?
I've never seen any of them.
Yeah, that
Um, possibly. But one thing I will say about Hawkman, I really like him. I like him as that leader, that kind
yeah,
of, very uptight kind of, but with a heart of gold leader of the Justice Society that he
yeah.
seems to be. I like that people will say, "Oh, look at him. He's just a rip off of Sam Wilson, isn't he?"
Right?
Probably
Because I'm like,
probably
people
became
were probably
before Sam
I think
Wilson,
people were
really.
making their comparisons. You had your Storm, you had
You did,
your your
yes.
Falcon, you had
Your
your
Doctor
Ant-Man,
Strange.
you had your Doctor Strange, you had your Ant-Man in a Deadpool mask.
I mean, people aren't wrong. People aren't wrong. But which
Yes.
characters came first is the question. I
Yeah,
don't know for sure,
DC
but
typically
DC's
is
way
always
up.
first. DC is typically always first, when it comes to those things, but, uh,
It absolutely is.
yeah.
Um, Hawkman's wings actually looks like bird wings rather than what Sam Wilson's look
like
like, which are
techie.
still just techie metal things.
Yes, but I think his was actually supposed to be things that you would have used in the military. So I think, yeah,
That is true, I know
yes,
that,
that
but
was
there's still,
military tech.
as far as your flying bird superhero goes,
Yeah,
Hawkman's wings are better than Captain America's
yeah.
wings as far as Morgan's concerned.
Yes, so they looked a lot cooler, and I thought the helmet was gonna look dumb, but no, like, it actually
No, it
worked,
didn't.
and
It didn't, and
yeah.
so did Doctor Fate's. I mean, you don't exactly see Pierce Brosnan under it because it's just a big hard gold thing.
Yes, but I mean, you see him kinda with the helmet off, and I'm sure it was a whole CGI suit, but
Yeah,
he looked great, and when he wasn't, he was dressed like somebody who would be asking you for some Grey Poupon, you know?
he was dressed like how I hope to dress when I'm in my
He had his
60s.
little robes and his ascots, like, very okay,
He
which I
was
liked.
so
I was I
well
was
dressed in this
I
movie
was
for
there
Pierce
for it.
Brosnan.
Yes, I loved him just kinda popping in and giving his little wisdom of the future
Yeah,
and fate talk and then kind of walking out, like, he what he needed to do worked really well. You could tell, like, they did establish a nice relationship between him and, Aldous Hodge and the
yes,
emotion there. So you actually felt that because I think, in kind of the craziness of this movie, the kind of silliness of this movie, it might be hard to establish that bond, or it might feel
definitely.
rushed and unearned, but I think they took the time to do that and show kind of quiet moments of conversation between the two of them, so that you really did care about them, so that final kind of moment did have some impact. Um,
I
I will
entirely
say
agree.
yes, I will say our villain looked very much like, a character in a Tekken cutscene. Because we
I
do have,
mean,
like,
what was it?
a
What was
devil. We
what
do
was
have
his name? What was his name? I forget his name. I don't care. I like the movie. I don't care what his name was. He looked like the devil. He looked like Satan. He was a
yes,
satanic, hellish villain.
Acton, I think.
No,
That what
was
it
it?
was.
Did he not have the same name as the Crown? I
Oh,
don't
Sabak.
remember.
Sabak?
Sabak.
Okay,
Sabak, which
yes.
I'm sure is that weird alien chess game they play in Star Wars, by the
Yes, and
way.
I think I don't know if this is the same guy who played well, you never watched that movie, so you can't answer that question, but I wanna say it's the same guy who played Jafar in the live action Aladdin, but
Oh,
he
okay.
yes, but yeah, like, he looked very much like a Tekken
I,
cutscene villain
I
character
didn't
in the
mind. I didn't mind
CGI,
the look of him
which it
actually.
didn't it didn't bother me. We got a sky beam, it didn't bother me,
I didn't
like
mind the look of him. I did not mind the look of
yeah,
a more actual villain in this movie.
yes,
And as far as Atom Smasher and
and
Cyclone
Cyclone,
go,
yes.
they didn't do much, but they were
No,
there. They
but
were
they were
fun.
very
They were cool. I like them.
yeah,
I like
they
them.
felt like young, late additions to the team. You call on them when you need them. That's why you recruited them to kind of come in and give a little backup, and that's what they did. They were kind of a young aspect. Lots of slow-mo to kind of show their powers. The CGI wasn't great, but it looked very nice and smooth and I liked the slow-mo was not it was very heavy-handed, but it worked for me, somehow.
Well,
So
that's
you
that's a
in
residue
terms
of
of
Snyder, isn't it?
yes,
It
but
the slow mo was heavy handed, but it looks good. It looks
yes,
good.
right? Like, because I liked, we don't know their powers, we don't really know them, so giving the slow-mo to kinda see their faces within the kind of
Yeah.
use of their powers and things like that, I thought, I wanted to see that, to kind of see the person with the ability because they're new to us. So yeah, I think they were used well in terms of how they were introduced. They weren't introduced as kind of these big, you know, defining members of the team. They were introduced as kind of backup and they served as backup and they were funny in
It
their moments. They were likable in their moments. And I think that worked. Henry Winkler, little cameo, like, okay, nice
Yes,
to
as
see
the
you. Nice.
original Atom Smasher, apparently.
Yeah, I liked that.
That's
It was
fun.
cute. Yeah.
What they were introduced like was members of the Suicide Squad. And not Suicide Squad, the weird movie that was objectively dreadful.
Yeah.
The good movie that came out like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, they were introduced just like, oh yeah, you're there, you do that. Like, how are we gonna know you do that? Because we're just gonna see one scene of you doing that.
Yes.
And that's
And
you.
that's enough, yes. It
That's
worked, it
you. We
worked.
don't need a whole big origin story for every little tiny person, do we? MCU. The MCU
Yes.
do it great, but that is what the MCU do. They give an
Yeah.
origin story to absolutely everybody.
Everyone. Yes, I mean, the mother and the son and her brother and that whole kind of, like, human dynamic to help ground Black Adam, I think, to show
Yeah.
him what his presence means to the people, for her to kind of side with his perspective on being a champion
Well,
against the
yeah.
Justice Society, and seeing, like, and I loved her kind of calling out Hawkman, like, we've been struggling for however long, and where have you been? Now you want to show up when our champion is here to do what needs to be done to get rid of to liberate us, and now that's
Yeah.
when you show up. So your mentality on trying to come save us from whatever you think you need to save us from is warped, because we have been struggling for however long with these awful people, this awful militia in here, and now you want to show up to stop somebody who's actually going to, take the hard road to getting it done for us. So I loved that they kind of called that out, and then she was kind of, stepping up to them, and they set her up as a really great character. I like the relationship with her son, and I really thought kind of the son relationship with Black Adam was going to be this kind of corny kind of thing, but it
Yeah,
actually
I've seen people say like he was annoying. I didn't find that kid
no,
annoying
because
at
usually
all.
kid characters like that are can be really annoying, but it actually worked. Um and I liked it was there was enough of the relationship between the two of them. There was enough between the relationship between them and Black Adam that helped, that you could see, understand, humanizing him, and him kind of understanding a little bit of another side, but not fully changing, because he
Yeah,
has these human people who live in this terrible world kind of siding with him and understanding him, and the people being behind him, and then
yeah,
him kind of having to learn to be that hero that his son thought he was, and learning that he wasn't kind of the chosen champion. His son made him the champion. And so
yes, yeah,
yeah, like those are kind of the more serious, deeper themes that we're getting in this kind of fun, colorful thing. So I like that there was enough in there to kind of ground it and give it some nuance, and it wasn't just kind of this mindless thing the whole time and throwing a bunch of
no,
action in your face, because you had this kind of solid through line and kind of things to think about in terms of what an anti-hero means and stuff like that, and kind of the conflict between him and the Justice Society and all of that. You had some deeper things to chew on, so it kind of helped you, you know. It was the your kind of through line covered in kind of some fun flair. So yeah,
yes,
it wasn't
and
completely a mindless thing, which it could have definitely become.
even those like you say those somewhat deeper themes, um, you could have told a really quite serious story of you know, oppressive foreign invasion and things
Yeah.
like that. You could have done that. It half does that because it does still want to be, like you say, the fun superhero movie that it ends up being.
Yeah.
And I think a movie with more, or I suppose maybe a production house with more confidence, may have really delved quite harshly into these kind of oppressive kind of takeover situation, and having a protector that protects you from that, and what's right and wrong, and making it really, really morally grey.
Yeah. Mhm.
But we're not there with DC. We're not
Yeah.
there with DC. We are where we are at with DC. We are at the result that is this Black Adam movie with DC, and I think that is perfectly good
Yeah.
for where we're at. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the movie. I hope to see more of this attitude towards
Yeah.
DC movies.
It's a nice direction to take after kind of everything we've been hearing about, to see what's happening with DC. It's a definite fun, positive, optimistic, and hopeful direction to take after kind of everything that's been going on with them. So I think this was
It,
definitely a nice kickoff to some
it does
potential
not
really.
change the game for anything, though. It is a it
No,
is
it
a it
doesn't.
is a very typical superhero
It
movie,
is, but I
and that
think
is
they needed that right
exactly
now.
what
It's
they
exactly what
needed.
they needed in this moment. So,
Yes.
yeah, I'm surprised. I really liked Black Adam. I had fun with it. Not a perfect superhero movie, but exactly what DC needed at this time, and a lot of fun.
Yes. Well, there we go. I think it's fair to say we enjoyed.
Yeah.
General applause for
Mhm.
Black Adam. There. Yes. Okay.